Segment 2 of the Chris Richman Show is on for May 19th. That's a Monday for those of you playing the home game. May 19th, 2025. And we are back. All right, let's get right into it. I want to finish up real quick on the plugs cancer thing. Scott Adams, who did the Dilbert series, he's a cartoonist, that sort of thing, has become a rather outspoken conservative commentator, well, relatively conservative commentator in recent years, shared this, that he as well, he's actually had it longer, he says, than so-called President Biden, but that he also has the same thing, prostate cancer, aggressive prostate cancer. His prognosis is probably to the end of the month, or next month, they said. We can listen to that real quick here. Listen to Scott talk about it. It's this is sad. I mean, it's sad for plugs too. If he really has cancer, I mean, my best wishes are with him and his family. Just with all the grift that's been going on lately with him, it makes you wonder. With Scott, though, I really don't doubt this. So let's hear this, what he says here.
That today is a day I'm going to take the opportunity, since a lot of you are here, to make an announcement of my own. Some of you have already guessed, so this won't surprise you at all. But I have the same cancer that Joe Biden has. So I also have prostate cancer that has also spread to my bones. But I've had it longer than he's had it. Well, longer than he's admitted having it. So my life
Correct.
expectancy is maybe the summer.
Okay.
I expect to be checking out from this domain sometime this summer. Now, in California, I've got an option that he doesn't have. And I was actually an activist when California was considering this. And in California, once you get to the point where you're definitely going to die, you're terminal, there's a very civilized process where you can get some juice that you drink that makes you fall asleep and then you pass away.
I sorry, I didn't realize that was in there. I forgot about that. But so anyway, I hope Scott's well. I hope he is able, like, for example, to get in touch with Todd Herman. Todd Herman was saying he's been down to Renew Healthcare in Mexico, and they've been able to do some wonderful things with stem cells there. I would hope that would be an option for Scott, because I hate to see anybody struggle with cancer. It's a nasty little disease, and kind of the fact that we haven't found a cure for it yet, supposedly. Let me put it this way: it makes me question the whole medical establishment. I mean, we can find all these other things, remarkably. We can find, we can go to the moon, we can do this, but for some reason we can't figure out how to cure cancer, how to stop the cells from mutating into cancer, despite the billions and billions and maybe even trillions of dollars at this point that have been spent on it. I find that hard to believe, to be honest with you. I really do. It smacks of this, cancer companies, these chemical companies, pharmaceutical companies, whatever you want to call them, they make piles of money each year off of cancer patients, off of chemotherapy drugs, radiation treatments, all that. And it's hard for me to believe that we can't find a cure. I really do. I find that incredibly hard to believe. So anyway, I do hope that that Plugs and President Biden, or Plugs rather, so-called President Biden, and Scott Adams both recover. Their cancer's go into remission. And they're able to be with us. With Plugs, in his case, like I said, I am a little dubious of his diagnosis, but we'll see. Anyway, and then J.D. Vance actually had a really interesting comment about this. This was off of C-SPAN, reposted here by Eric Doherty, but let's go ahead and hear this. He was, I guess, on Air Force Two. I'm guessing. So let's hear what JD had to say.
Speaking of Joe Biden, sir, do you have any thoughts on his diagnosis?
Yeah, look, I mean, first of all, of course, we wish the best for the former president's health. And, it sounds pretty serious, but hopefully he makes the right recovery. Like, I will say, whether the right time to have this conversation is now or at some point in the future, we really do need to be honest about whether the former president was capable of doing the job. And that's no... that you can separate the desire for him to have the right health outcome with the recognition that whether it was doctors or whether there were staffers around the former president, I don't think he was able to do a good job for the American people. And that's not politics. That's not because I disagreed with him on policy. That's because I don't think that he was in good enough health. In some ways, I blame him less than I blame the people around him.
Oh, 100%.
And why did the American people have a better sense of his health picture? Why didn't the American people have more accurate information about what he was actually dealing with? This is serious stuff. And this is the guy who carries around the nuclear football for the world's largest nuclear arsenal. This is not child's play, and we can pray for good health, but also recognize that if you're not in good enough health to do the job, you shouldn't be doing the job. Okay.
Yeah, two things can be true at once. Absolutely, they can. Vice President Vance is 100% right on that. And we talked about this last hour. I can pray for Joe Biden to get better, but still have serious and significant questions about his ability to, whether he was actually capable of being president, for the years, and he did. And again, I've seen studies now or stories now where they're questioning whether or not he was actually cogent and able to do the job back in 2020. Well, isn't that convenient? They're asking the questions now, 5 years later, and they were complicit in it 5 years ago, and they're asking the questions now. Well, that seems a little, how shall I say, disingenuous, to say the least. I that's just it completely just is insane to me. I don't understand it. I don't understand how the media thought they were going to get away with this for as long as they did. I really don't. It should have been, this should have been put to bed long ago. All right. Real quick funny thing here. For those of you who are on the screen, you probably already read this several times, but I'll go ahead and read it for those of you who are just listening. This was posted by originally posted by someone named Bad Hombre, and it was in response to Tim McBride, now calling himself Sarah McBride. I'm heartbroken to learn of so-called President Biden's diagnosis. So-called President Biden, has faced immense challenges throughout his life with resilience and grace. I know he'll face this battle with the same strength and dignity. My prayers are with him, so-called Dr. Biden, and their entire family. And then Bad Hombre replies, let this be a reminder. Routine prostate exams can save lives. Make sure you schedule yours, Congressman. Replying to, again, Tim McBride, who now goes by Sarah and pretends he's a woman. I find that hilarious. Again, we conservatives can make anything funny. We really can. So, yeah. Anyway. All right. Next. I want to... Yeah. So forced reset triggers. You guys may have heard over the weekend that, and actually we talked about it on Friday, I think it was, that the ATF and DOJ have abandoned their prosecution and attempt to make forced reset triggers illegal. Now, for those of you who don't know what these are, they are a type of trigger that allows you to fire semi-automatic, but very rapid, which is very cool. They are not machine guns in any way, shape, or form. And finally, people have realized that. Well, of course, the left has had a complete meltdown about this. Firearms Policy Coalition posted this. After previously being denied, multiple states have refiled their motion to intervene in National Association of Gun Rights' lawsuit over ATF's reclassification of forced reset triggers, saying that, quote, there is significant evidence that FRTs have proliferated across the country, unquote. And what's the point? Even if they are now all over the country, let's say they're completely all over the country, what's your point? So what? Who cares? If they are legal, and even if, they are a legal firearm modification, who cares? It's none of your business whether or not they proliferated. And frankly, honestly, the fact that they have proliferated, to me, makes the case they should not be on any kind of registration or list or any of that. Same thing with suppressors. The amount of suppressors being manufactured right now is astronomical, and suppressor ownership has gone up something like 4,000% in what was it, the last, 20 years? And I mean, while we're at it, it's actually beneficial, by the way. This type of thing where you have this, you had the whole Hughes Amendment thing, right? Back in the 86 FOPA, Firearm Owners Protection Act. And the fact that suppressors, this was back in the early 2000s, Silencer Co. and Advanced Armament really pushed to get out into the mainstream and say, hey guys, by the way, suppressor ownership is legal in many states. You just have to go in and do it. And really push that forward. And because of that, because of the amount of suppressors out there now, and the fact that they are selling, companies have strove to make better and better and better suppressors. So you've seen the advent of, better baffling systems, 3D printing suppressors, flow-through designs. All this stuff has benefited the suppressor industry and, by extension, the military. Because now these cans that they're using now are so far advanced over what we've had, for the past, or, prior to 2000, going back, years and years, decades, centuries even. So superior. And so the performance has gotten better. And so it has made our soldiers and our warfighters even more lethal. And now if a cop, let's say a police officer, a SWAT team is going in to clear a house, right? Now they can maintain situational awareness in like a drug den or something like that, right? Where flash suppression might light off something, or, if a flash comes out, or they may have to, kind of in the same thing in a home defense scenario, dispatch someone and then there's another person there. Now they can be more tactically aware. So this has benefited a lot of industries and groups. And I think having the forced reset trigger out there will cause a lot of benefits too. And I would argue removing the block on machine guns would have a huge benefit for the military as well. I mean, look at the military, all the crap that's been going on in the past, 30, 40 years now, but especially in the last 20. This is going to be, this is going to replace the M4. This cartridge, is going to replace the 5.56 millimeter. First, it was 6.8 SPC, and then, 45 or 450 Bushmaster was another one, 50 Beowulf, all this stuff, all these rounds, we're going to do this. And then it was, okay, piston guns are out now. So we took the best part of the AK, supposedly, and brought that over to ARs. And yeah, that's going to they're going to get rid of the M4. They're going to modify it heavily. And now they've got the M7, which was originally the M5, but they didn't want to piss off, Aero Precision or somebody who makes an M5 model. So now it's the M7. And now that's, and they got a brand new cartridge for that, the 6.8 by 51, which is a super high pressure bimetallic case, all this stuff that's super expensive to manufacture. Well, people are kind of looking at this and going, okay, so it's higher pressure, so more recoil. It's going to beat the parts up on the gun really quick. It's heavy, extremely heavy compared to a 5.56 loadout. I mean, all these things, and they still haven't found a better mousetrap, right? So, and again, firing a 6.8 on full auto is pretty wicked. It's kind of similar to why they didn't, why the M14 they didn't keep it too long, because you fire an M14 on full auto and it's an experience. Let's put it that way. Versus the 5.56, which is relatively controllable, Anyway, so if they were to do that, one, you would see a lot of technical innovation because, oh, well, we sell Select Fire too. Okay, but why should I spend more money on you when I can go over here? Oh, well, because we do A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Okay, great. And so on and so forth. Competition, innovation, all the things we need. And again, that will then cycle into the military. Maybe the military will say, you know what? Hey, we want to get a new Select Fire rifle. Let's do this, and maybe they scrap the M7 program because, again, it's too heavy or too this or too that, and it needs to run suppressed. Like the M7 is designed to run suppressed. Okay, great. Here, this, that, and the other. It will allow the military to basically have the largest group of beta testers in the entire world. I mean, there's 150 million gun owners out there or whatever it is. And, in the United States alone, that's a pretty big testing group. So if they can go and say, hey, you know what, we got this submission from SIG and we got this one from Colt and this one from whatever company, and by the way, their designs have been in the public now for several years. This technology works. It's the only difference would be this one, that the military is going to use will be painted flat dark earth, and it'll have a beefed up barrel or whatever it is, or it'll have an attachment that maybe the civilian one doesn't have, or maybe it'll just be a straight across port. The point is there'll be this huge ability for the public to test it, to run it, to torture test it, to do this, do that, instead of having to go through this super expensive process that they do now, which is incredibly expensive, doesn't work a lot of the time, and is much more time bound, right? This could be, well, you know what? Hey, let's go ahead and release this out. And then a year later, maybe they have a hint that something will come up, or maybe they just put it out. And then year 2, 3 down the road, here comes a military requisition. Oh, you know what? We've got a tested and proved system. Let's go ahead and put in for it. Hello. And again, it also goes back to, do you really want to try and invade the U.S.? Really? Because, right now, a lot of countries know that's probably not going to be your best option, given, again, there are basically, as to supposedly the Emperor of Japan said this in the 30s, there's a gun behind every blade of grass. Well, this could take it even further and be, there's a machine gun potentially behind every blade of grass. Or, if the FRTs are as far as it goes, a gun capable of substantial rate of fire in semi-auto mode behind every blade of grass. We'll see what happens. Anyway, so we'll see what happens. It's, of course, like I said, the liberals are already melting down about that. Like I said, I just read you something from the Firearms Policy Coalition. The Seattle Times, it was Source One. So this is from the Associated Press, put out by Alana Durkin Richer. This was updated 8 hours ago. Originally came out on the 17th, so Saturday. Justice Department deal ends a ban on aftermarket trigger. Gun control advocates are alarmed. So again, D.C. Dateline. The Trump administration will allow the sale of forced... Okay, the Trump administration isn't going to allow anything. They are merely going to say, hey, we're not going to try and unconstitutionally take these from you. So they're not allowing anything. The founders allowed us to keep and bear arms with the Second Amendment, which, by the way, was also kind of derived from God in a way. Maybe not the arms part, but certainly the freedom part. Anyway, the Trump administration will allow, air quotes, the sale of forced reset triggers, which makes semi-automatic rifles fire more rapidly. With the federal government ending a long-standing ban, it wasn't long-standing. What a stupid comment. Good God, can these guys actually get something right for once? It's not long-standing. It's been, 6 years, maybe? 7? It's not long-standing. As part of a settlement that also requires it to return seized devices. Well, damn straight. The agreement announced Friday by the Justice Department resolves a series of cases over the aftermarket trigger that the government had previously argued qualify as machine guns under federal law. The settlement is a dramatic shift in Second Amendment policy under the Republican administration. No, it's not. It's not a dramatic Second Amendment policy. What a stupid thing to say. Which has signaled it may undo many of the regulations the previous administration of plugs had fought to keep in place in an effort to curb gun violence. No, it's not to curb gun violence. It's to control us, to control law-abiding citizens. That's what it is. That's all it is. If you honestly think, okay, I need to breathe. This has nothing to do with so-called gun violence. Again, law-abiding gun owners are not going to use an FRT or a select fire weapon or a suppressor or whatever to commit crimes. Criminals will do that, and guess what? Criminals don't follow laws. Learn it, live it, love it. The second you figure that out, the second you understand that whatever you do, criminals don't follow laws, you're going to be much happier in life. Okay, the Department of Justice believes that the Second Amendment is not a second-class right, Attorney General Pam Bondi said in a statement. Gun control advocates said the settlement would worsen gun violence. The Trump administration has just effectively legalized machine guns. Lives will be lost because of his actions, said Vanessa Gonzalez, Vice President of Government and Political Affairs at Giffords, a gun control group. Now, for those of you who don't know who Giffords is, it's named after Gabby Giffords, a former, I think it was senator from Arizona. Maybe it was a representative, I don't remember, who was shot by a wackadoo. And so that's named after her. And they're not a gun. Yeah, they are a gun control group. That's actually written correctly. Amazing. There have been many legal battles over forced reset triggers, which replace the typical trigger on an AR-15 style rifle. Not just ARs, but whatever. The government for years had argued they are essentially illegal machine gun conversion devices because constant finger pressure on the triggers will keep a rifle firing essentially like an automatic. Except it's not like an automatic anyway. The deal announced Friday was between the Justice Department and Rare Breed Triggers, which was previously represented by David Warrington, Trump's current White House counsel. Rare Breed Triggers argued that the Department of ATF, or the Bureau of ATF rather, was wrong in its classification and ignored demands to stop selling the triggers before being sued by the Biden administration. This victory is a landmark moment in the fight against unchecked government overreach, Lawrence DeMonico, the group's president, said in a statement. The ATF and DOJ have tried to silence and bury us not because we broke the law, but because I refused to bend to the will of a tyrannical administration. Under the settlement, Rare Breed Triggers has agreed not to develop such devices to be used on handguns, according to the Justice Department. The settlement requires the ATF to return triggers that it has seized or that owners had it voluntarily surrendered to the government. Okay, so developed such devices to be used on handguns. Okay, great. We won't. Because here's the thing about that. If you had, it would be very, let me put it this way. It would be much harder to force reset a handgun trigger than it would be a long gun. And also there's this. If you've ever seen somebody try and fire, say, a Glock 18 or a Glock modified with a Glock switch, what is laughingly called the Glock switch, essentially a sear disconnector, they're very hard to control. Even expert, shooters, or, even that video with that idiot ATF guy shooting, they are not easy to control. So I'd be fine with not having a fully automatic handgun. Honestly, I don't quite understand the need to it. I'm sure you should be able to buy one 100%. If you want it, you should be able to buy it. But at the same time, if that's the agreement they had to sign, I'll sign that all day long and twice on Sunday. Because here's the thing, a long arm with an FRT would be a useful piece of equipment. A handgun with an FRT, not so much. I'd be fine with that. Now, it doesn't say another company can't develop that. So who knows? Maybe another one will. We'll see. Anyway, so yeah, the left is freaking out about that. Washington State is trying to pass laws now that will outlaw it. I'm sure that'll happen in the near future. Let's put it that way, if it hasn't already. Outlaw it by name, but we'll see. All right, let's take a quick music break, and we will be right back. All right, back to it we are. Chris Richman Show for May 19th, Monday, May 19th, 2025. All right, let's head across the Atlantic here and go to Africa. It's funny, people are saying, well, I don't understand why they're allowing all these, South African farmers to come in. There's really nothing that is being done there. I don't know why they're allowing them to have temporary protected status, even though there's several farmers murdered per day. Well, let's hear what a reporter on the ground in Africa found out.
So deep into history, you've taken us back to the 17th century. Yes. In that case, shouldn't everybody leave the property to the Khoisan, who are thought to be the native occupants of South Africa?
No, actually, Africa and South Africa, it belongs to the Bantu people. It belongs to the Ngunis. So it belongs to the people of Africa.
What about Tavy here?
We are not saying it doesn't belong here. Now that we are living together here, our perspective is that the land must go back to the chiefs, the traditional leaders, and the state. We are unapologetic about this. Mm-hmm. Land must be expropriated without compensation.
So deep into history, you've taken us back to the 17th century.
Expropriated without compensation. Here's, I guess this is my whole thought process on this South Africa thing. Of the African countries, South Africa is pretty high up on the wealth factor. It might not be the wealthiest, but I would guess it's pretty close, if it's not the wealthiest. And a lot of the people that are living there right now, a lot of the farmers that have lived there for, that are currently own land there, some of them are young enough where they weren't even born when apartheid was still around. Even more were not born when slavery was around. I mean, they may have been around during apartheid, partially at least, but when there were slaves there. And the other part of this is, have they used the land well? Have they generated good things for South Africa and have they helped the people? Now, don't get me wrong. I do not support the taking of land per se. However, if there was a conflict, a war, whatever it is, and one group won and now occupies that land, well, that's a whole different kettle of fish. For example, like in the United States here. Oh, well, we need, you'll see the so-called native tribes come out and say, well, this is our land. Yeah, it may have been. However, you guys and the United States government got into a war. I'm not saying you guys started it, not at all. But you lost. That said, the difference between where we were and where we are now is striking. And I do not for any 1 second believe that level of prosperity and civility maybe, would have been capable had the United States not been here. If you look at a lot of the so-called native tribes back before Europeans came across. And let me first preface this by saying the Europeans that came across, some of them were real scumbags. Just saying. But slavery was common between the tribes. And that's the other thing, too. You go over to Africa. Slavery was not a white invention. There was slavery in Africa. Black tribe leaders having black slaves of tribes they had conquered. And again, this has been throughout human history. This is the first time really, in human history where we've had the majority of the planet not have slavery. Now, China, of course, they don't talk about this, but the Uyghurs are slaves there. And yet you don't see the liberals having a cow about that, do you? Now, it's one thing to petition and to, let's say that they had the folks that are saying, Africa, the lands of South Africa need to be handed back to the quote unquote native tribes. Okay. So they go through and they make a law saying, okay, here's the thing. We need to do this. And we're giving you, so much time to do this. And they didn't do that. They just said basically, oh yeah, we're not going to worry about it when these roving gangs come in and kill people. It's no big deal. It's not a big problem. We're not going to worry about it. So when you know that, even though you've had this land in your family for hundreds of years, that you are marked and that someday you may come home and your family will be dead, or in the middle of the night, you might get a knock on the door and there'll be a whole mob out there waiting to kill you and your family in a very unpleasant way. And thus you want to get the hell out of Dodge. Well, that kind of makes sense. That makes sense. Hey, you know what? I'm going to come over here, now, and live in the U.S. Now, again, this is temporary protected status. It is not permanent. Now, I'm sure they can come over and file to be made permanent residents, or even, I don't know what else it would be, but, and eventually citizens. I can totally see that. And do I think we should necessarily end temporary protection for people in other countries that are here right now, whose countries are still falling apart? Not necessarily. And as long as they are following our rules and obeying our laws, then I don't see a problem with them staying here. As long as they're following the laws. So we'll see what happens. But I mean, to me, it is very legitimate for these people to not want to be in South Africa anymore because of the incredible violence and brutality that's being displayed there. I wouldn't want to be either, frankly. So, all right. Let's move on real quick to some other news. Switch gears here over to my regular Twitter or my regular news feed. It's funny. We have CBS News's CEO, Wendy McMahon, abruptly resigned. This is from Fox News, by the way. Abruptly resigned, citing disagreements with the company amid, quote, challenging period. Okay, so you may remember this guy that headed up 60 Minutes. Apparently it's Bill Owens here. He quit when it was found out that Trump and CBS were going to settle on the lawsuit Trump had filed against CBS. Well, my question is this. I find it interesting that she is leaving now. And it makes me wonder what's going on. Why would she leave right now? Is there more stuff going on that we don't know about that could possibly make the argument for Trump, or make the argument that maybe CBS is hiding other things? Given what's going on with Biden's decline, and them doing the whole CYA thing, right? The news media, CNN, New York Times, all this stuff. Is CBS maybe they had some information about plugs, or maybe they did an interview with plugs that they didn't air because it was very obvious that plugs wasn't there. I don't know, but I do find the timing relatively interesting. and it's funny because I'm reading the article here on Fox. A CBS news staffer rather, told Fox News Digital that McMahon took part in the network's editorial call on Monday and didn't mention her looming resignation. Huh. Well, isn't that interesting? So she was on the call with them, but didn't say anything about it. So why would you do that? Well, someone got to her. One is a possibility. So option number one is maybe someone got to her. Option two, she knew something was going to come out that she didn't want to be tied to at all. Or option three, maybe she legitimately had something come up and just couldn't do the job. I don't know. My guess is the first two, one of the first two, if not both. So we'll see. It'll develop or it won't. Frankly, with liberals like that, I really don't care. Oh, gosh. Let's see here. Oh, this is funny. So they're talking about this Robert Hur thing, right? Kind of, again, going back to plugs just for a second here. They're talking about how, well, nobody really knew. And you might have had suspicions, but there wasn't anything, truly that would tie it all together. But they're also looking at, okay, well, Robert Hur had this special report, and he said, yeah, Biden's not all there. Well, now they're coming after Robert Hur. So this is again from Fox News. CNN host suggests Robert Hur, quote, undersold, unquote, extent of Biden's memory lapses during special counsel interview. CNN host Abby Phillips suggested on Friday that former special counsel Robert Hur undersold the extent of President Biden's decline after his interview with the former president in the February 2023 classified documents probe. If you remember, that was when they were trying to figure out whether Plugs had illegally taken and stored classified documents, which of course he had. And Hur came in and said, well, I don't find any reason. And frankly, he's not there anyway, essentially. Let's listen to this because this ought to be rather interesting.
These clips were in from February. I mean, if Democrats had taken seriously, which, by the way, in a way, Robert Hur kind of undersold this. He kind of threw Joe Biden a lifeline. It was an opportunity, actually, for Democrats to take it seriously, maybe change gears at that point, maybe given a potential nominee more time.
He gave him dignity in the answer as president, which might have been warranted. But you just showed a clip of 3 people gaslighting and lying directly to the American people. And I would count the number at 0. The number is 0 of people that heard the Hur tape and were surprised. And this is why there's so much distrust in media. Because you're right, maybe in 2020 it wasn't obvious. But 2022, 2023, right? Now everyone's...
So notice, I want to parse that for just a second. Maybe in 2020 it wasn't obvious. Yeah, by the way, this is Joe Borelli, who was supposedly the former Republican leader of the New York City Council. No offense, a Republican with air quotes, leader in New York is not really a Republican. Usually it's a rhino. Anyway, so maybe it wasn't obvious in 2020. Joe, with all due respect, it was obvious in 2020. It was very, very obvious. There's a reason why everybody was going, this dude's not there. How on earth are they running him? Go back and listen to tapes of Rush, of Hannity, of Todd Herman, of Ken Matthews, of Mark Stein. Take your pick. Take your pick of people. Look at Fox News, look at OAN, look at Right Side Broadcasting, look at Newsmax, there was all kinds. Look at the internet. There was all kinds of questions about this and all kinds of evidence that Biden wasn't right. Look at them shutting down the campaign at, what was it, noon? Every day? Come on. Give me a break, Joe. And then, as it went further, of course, it became more and more obvious. Duh.
saw this person first with the notes of who to ask questions, with the questions pre-handed out, pre-answered, right? Then there was the guy, he couldn't get up the stairs, and he couldn't get up a single flight of stairs without falling. He fell off his bike. He would struggle for every answer. We all saw that. And
so now this Borelli guy, who used to be the Republican leader in New York, apparently, or council or whatever it was. Now he's the managing director at Chartwell Strategy. No idea what that is. It's a think tank, probably, or a strategic type thing. Probably fairly rhino. I don't know. Who cares?
most of us were able to identify the fact that the White House and allies in media were lying night after night after night. And then suddenly the script flipped it. Joe Biden was cast aside, and suddenly now we can talk about that as though we all should have known it, or we all should have saw it. We all made mistakes that maybe we should apologize for. But it was clear as day to anybody.
Absolutely. 100%. I mean, how do you not? Like I said, this is all CYA. This is all the media trying to find, in desperation, by the way, trying to find anybody, anything they can blame to cover their own butts because they lied, and obviously lied. I mean, and it's funny because Fox News now is supposedly on this big thing here, right? By the way, this article was written by Hannah Penrick, apparently. But Fox News is on this whole, we're really going to go after this and all this stuff. And I guess I would say to anybody who's like, yeah, Fox News has really done some good work. I would say, oh, really? Have they? Huh. Well, keep an eye out. Keep a weather eye on them, because the second the winds turn, they'll sell you out, just like they did Trump in 2020. Fox is, they go where the wind goes. Let's put it that way. So I'd be very careful with that. I mean, it's comical to hear this. Let's just put it that way. It is absolutely comical to hear this. They're so desperate. All right. Let's see. We don't even really care about that. At least I don't. So I'm not going to worry about it then. Let's see here. And apparently they did release the audio of the interview, and we probably should listen to a little bit of that at least. Don't know where it is. Yeah, we'll get to it later. I mean, this story isn't going anywhere, so yeah. The San Francisco Chronicle, by the way, long a bastion of liberal stupidity, and I'm saying that as nicely as I possibly can, has put out an article titled, I'm not joking on this, "Is Trump's base racist? Social scientists begin to weigh in." Subhead: President Donald Trump's most ardent supporters are motivated by their prejudices, not economic concerns, social scientists contend. Will Democrats stop trying to win their votes? Okay. So essentially what this article says is that of the 77 million people that voted for President Trump in 2020 and 2024, let's say the base is 50 million of those. Basically that, a good fourth or sixth of the population in the United States is racist. We're all a bunch of racists. Now, never mind. Don't pay attention to the fact that Donald Trump did better in every single election than the previous, with blacks, with Hispanics, with Asians, with women, and every demographic except for, I think it was white. Was it white women, 25 to 40 or something like that? I don't remember. There was one, or maybe it was white males. I don't know. There was one demographic, just one, where he had less support in 2024 than he did in 2020. Other than that, every single demographic went up. So I'm wondering how this article even got printed by Raheem Hosseini. I'm wondering if Raheem is looking at I'm guessing he's Muslim. I could be wrong on that, but I'm wondering if he realizes he has literally called about 70 million people, because if you think about it, if he did better than a lot of people support him, potentially 77 million people in the country racist. I wonder if he realizes that this is the exact reason why the liberals are losing, is because they can't square the fact that their message sucks, that their candidates suck, that their candidate in this last election sucked, that they had to cheat to win in 2020 because their candidate sucked. Their candidate in 2016, who Trump pounded into the ground, sucked. That'd be Hillary, by the way, for those of you playing the home game. Instead of acknowledging that, instead of going, damn, we need to get some better candidates, we need to get some better messaging. No, nope, the right, they're all racist. Anybody that votes for Trump or supports a Republican agenda is racist. If you don't agree with us 100%, you're racist. They can't get it. They don't get it. They don't understand, or they refuse to understand. It's like walking up to a tree and whacking your head against it and then wondering why your head hurts. So, well, let's whack it again. They can't figure it out. They can't figure out that they're shooting themselves in the foot with this crap, with this stupid accusation. And it's infuriating. I'm not even a Democrat. I like seeing liberals lose elections, okay? I'm fine with that. When they lose, that means the people that I support generally tend to get better and tend to do better. But even I am frustrated by this, and I'm not even a Democrat strategist. I can't even imagine how much of, if anybody out there, if you are a liberal or you know a liberal, they have to be tearing their hair out, especially if they're not a wacko lunatic progressive liberal. If they're more of a classical liberal or even a mainstream Democrat, they have to be tearing their hair out because, good God, what do they have to do to understand? We lost. We lost because our ideas weren't there, because we had piss poor candidates. Don't get me wrong. The Republican Party kind of shot itself in the foot too in 2008. We had a crappy candidate. Same thing with 2012. Obama was easily beatable had we had a candidate like maybe Donald Trump, who wasn't afraid to walk in and say, wow, this guy is a nut job. He is a drug user. He arguably isn't even American, depending on, I'm not going into the truther thing, but there are legitimate questions there. He's definitely a liberal, a progressive liberal. And, oh, by the way, there's this other thing going out there that maybe, just maybe, he's not who you think he is, both from paper, citizenship, and also he's probably same-sex attracted. Who knows? Lots of rumors about that too. But instead of going in and saying, we screwed this up, we are not doing this right, no, they just ignore it completely. And again, well, if you don't agree with us, you are a racist, sexist, bigoted, homophobe, psychopath, whatever it is. You don't win that way. You don't. I'm sorry. You can't. So if the Democrats really want to win, if they really want to get back on the winning track, they need to start having a message that actually means something. And they need to have candidates that actually aren't cuckoo birds off the reservation, which again, we'll discuss this again. That's why the only person that's running right now that is a possible for 28 that I'm really worried about on the Democrat side is Andy Beshear. That's it. All right, guys, this has been the second segment of the Chris Richman Show for Monday, May 19th, 2025. I want to appreciate you all joining us once again, and hope you have a great rest of the day. Above all, and as with all things, go with God.